I found out about a site that a guy named Ross Ulbricht founded. It was called the Silk Road on the dark web. And I was in a time of my life where I kind of used the offers of that website. So Germans have the highest rate of the savings on current accounts.
The highest rate of saving in fiat money, right?
In fiat money, in euro, yeah. I don't know how much it is, actually a couple of trillion euros, which is losing purchasing power every year. BlackRock had it in its filings that they leave the option open to fork Bitcoin. I think what would happen if they really forked off that first they could fork off. No, I'm just kidding.
If the state has control over the money, it will always have the incentive to enrich itself and their cronies. So that's the Cantillon effect, basically.
Yeah,
you need some organization, but maybe it's not about looting your people anymore. That would be great.
So today we're talking to Dennis and Hendrik. They're passionate Bitcoin enthusiasts and advocates. You both well connected in the German Bitcoin scene and founded the consultancy platform Bitcoin Explained. I believe both of you studied economics, and during your studies you realized that essential aspects of money aren't really taught properly at university. Is that right? Can I say it like that? And could you share a bit about your background and how you discovered Bitcoin?
Should I start? Hi, and thanks for inviting us, Daniel.
Thanks for coming.
Nice intro with that the universities are not teaching economics properly. That's funny, actually. Both me and Hendrik, we started a consultancy a couple of years ago, basically just because we were orange pilling all of our friends, family, and regularly talking about and discussing about it. And one day we thought, why not just make a job out of it and try to also earn some money with our passion, Bitcoin. Yeah, that's basically how we got into opening our own consultancy to orange pill people. How did I came to Bitcoin? Well, I discovered Bitcoin quite early, actually. I heard about it first, I think it was 2010. That I read the first article about it, but at that time it was just, I read about it and it didn't really interest me. I did not even understand what it was about. And then later on, a couple of years later, 2012, I found out about a site that a guy named Ross Ulbricht founded. It was called the Silk Road on the dark web. And I was in a time of my life where I kind of used the offers of that website. So, I was kind of forced to have a look into Bitcoin because of that. Really later on discovered Bitcoin from a new perspective again, because at that time I really didn't understand the background, the economics, what it was for. I just thought it's money for transacting on the internet without the government interfering and having a lot of privacy. That was the first thing I really thought about Bitcoin. It's not totally wrong, but I guess there are a few more aspects to that. Yeah, that's how I came into it, basically.
Interesting, yeah. Hendrik, anything to add? Or?
Yeah, so my personally Bitcoin story, let's say I was on my way to being a gold bug when I stumbled across Bitcoin. But at that time it was like, okay, the price is going up. I'm way too late. I'm waiting for it to drop maybe, or maybe I don't. And then I met Dennis at some party from another student. And Dennis was telling about Bitcoin and he was really passionate about it. And I was like, maybe it's a little bit more to it than I originally thought. And so I tried to look more into it. And yeah, that's where my journey to Bitcoin started, actually.
Great. Yeah. What do you think is missing in economic studies when it comes to money? What are they not teaching and why are they not teaching it? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think the creation of money, for example. So I don't know what. So we studied at the same university, but for me, the teachers or the professors never really got into how money is actually created. And I think that should be a much more covered topic.
Yeah, I also think that the whole topic of money is not really even slightly discussed in university. You don't even learn the very basics, like the functions of money or the very basics. It's not a topic at all in universities and not in schools, nowhere in the mainstream media, and it's a non-issue if you want to say so. I don't really know why that is. I have a guess, like with the creation of, the central banks in the beginning of the 20th century, that the state got like more in control of the school system and so on. And that's how, and with the upcoming and rise of like all the Keynesian economics that really flooded all the mainstream knowledge. And I think that's the key part of it, basically, why people are not learning about money and the different aspects and also different, how it affects them.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. And Bitcoin adoption in money, you're seeing it from a close distance. Germany has a big Bitcoin community, I believe, also like maybe the second biggest country with the second biggest amount of nodes, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. Germany also faces unique challenges. I think overregulation is one issue for founders that doesn't really help innovation. Would you agree to that? And if so, what do you think are the biggest challenges and also opportunities maybe in Germany?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that you have a political environment in Germany where it's really hard to bring new innovations, new things, not just Bitcoin or fintech stuff. Like in general, it's really hard in the German economy or in the market to found something new, like found a company or something and get going and get started. And I also think that if we're talking about Bitcoin, that people do not really see the need for sound money like Bitcoin. They don't see a need for other things like gold, or why they should maybe invest into stocks or something. Like Germans have I think the highest rate of the savings on current accounts. Absolutely.
The highest rate of saving in fiat money, right?
In fiat money, in euro, yeah. I don't know how much it is, actually, a couple of trillion euros, which is losing purchasing power every year constantly. I think that's not just crazy, it's also like a little bit stupid, I would say. People don't see the value of Bitcoin, basically, and that makes it really hard. For example, I have a wife, she comes from Asia. I don't have to explain to her what Bitcoin is for. She lived in a country where they had a military government, and it wasn't very hard to explain to her why you need something like Bitcoin.
Why is that? It's a cultural thing. I mean, when you're focused on security and non-risk, you have a non-risk averse attitude. Why do you save in fiat money? It's probably a lack of education.
Probably. And a lot of people are relying on mainstream media information. And I've never seen any mainstream media information recommending, let alone Bitcoin, but recommending actually doing something with your money and invest for the future.
So Germans have their money, save it on their accounts. And also, I think in Germany, they have the lowest ownage of property. But yeah, so there's stuff to do. What do you do with what you can do to help people understand that? How does your work look like, and how do you make sure that people understand the benefits of Bitcoin?
Just to add to the question before, like with Germans, like when Germans are really enthusiastic about something and have decided on something, they do everything they can to push the issue forward. And this applies in both a positive and a negative sense, I guess. And you see that with Germans who are convinced of Bitcoin, like Germans who, like, not just Germans, maybe, but like people from Germany who like found out about Bitcoin, read about Bitcoin, learned about Bitcoin, they are really, really enthusiastic. And that's also why we have, I think, the second biggest community here in Germany. like not only Germany, like Austria and Switzerland as well. It's like the whole German-speaking community here. And the Germans have that thing that when you like focus on something, then you push for it, you go for it. And I think that's still missing. Not only Bitcoin, also some other issues here that are not openly discussed really.
Yeah, and exactly there lies the opportunity, which is the second part of your question, what we can do about it, because we have a lot of help in the community to push Bitcoin forward. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the 21 meetup map, you will see orange dots all over Germany, all over Austria, all over Switzerland. And it's crazy to see how that developed in a couple of years. So,
and could you explain what 21 is? It's like a network of meetups, or?
Yeah, I think it started with a podcast, actually. I don't quite remember the year. It was around the block time, 700,000 and something. Maybe Dennis remembers, I don't know.
I think it was 2018 when I remember correctly. I remember listening to the first episodes of the 21.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where it all started. And then it grew into, maybe it's association, I don't know. But yeah, something like that.
Association, yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, they are actively supporting meetups, actively supporting people in the space, actively supporting developers with funds even, so they get a lot of money from the community members. And yeah, so that's a great effort.
Yeah, and also a lot of the second layer development is happening here in Germany. Is that right? Like Lightning development?
Yeah, definitely. Or for example, also eCash, also development, and a lot of it is happening in Germany, Lightning development, but we also have core developers from Germany. So yeah. A lot is happening.
Yeah. Interesting. And what in with your work, how does that look like? What are people asking? How do you explain things? What is your hands-on experience in that field?
Yeah. Like what we discovered is that we try to simplify a lot of things and try to not push too much knowledge at one time. What we discovered is that you just have to go for it. You have to practically like put people into doing things like in our workshops, we dice the private keys, not that we dice the private keys that they later on use for storing Bitcoin, but to show how to like dice your own private keys, how to store them properly, how to use different hardware wallets. Like we focus on some hardware wallets, but basically.
Which one?
We really like the BitBox from Shift Crypto. I call it BitBox right now. It's a really great product because everything's in German and it's kept very simply. The screen and the wallet itself has very simple features. There's also features for professionals, but it's really good for beginners. Basically, we try to bring the people directly into using Bitcoin. Like we teach them how to create a wallet, receive the Bitcoin, then we go look with them into the mempool and see how the transactions are confirmed, how the different blocks are added in the blockchain and then the timesheet in the blockchain. And then we send the Bitcoin again to another wallet and basically learn with them by doing it, not just the theory behind it.
So also practice orientated.
Yeah, I think this is the way to go. There's nothing like installing a Lightning wallet for someone and looking in their eyes while they receive the transaction, so they light up like, whoa, what? I didn't even have to register somewhere? What? That's crazy. How does that work? So
and what else do you teach? What is your course kind of? What does it contain?
We try to, like, we have different, different workshops, or maybe we have one-on-one sessions with some people who have different needs. But basically what we're doing is mainly like teaching like the whole theory about what is money, what is Bitcoin, history of money, how does Bitcoin work, then also how to buy Bitcoin on different markets, not only KYC platforms, also non-KYC platforms. how to maybe improve your privacy, how to install a node, how to do transactions, how to properly and safely secure your private keys. That's the main things that we do. And that's also what's mainly asked from people.
And may I ask what you would recommend where to buy if it was, for example, well, both registered or unregistered?
It really depends. Like some people, they are focused on saving fees, and then you mostly have to tell them to, if they want to save fees, to use a KYC exchange. Like there are so many KYC on normal exchanges right now. What we mostly tell them to do, if you set up like savings plan for buying Bitcoin, to maybe use Pocket Bitcoin or Coinfinity, Relay, all these European or Euro-based platforms where you can make a savings plan, 21 Bitcoin, for example.
Yeah. And interesting. And what are the most common questions you get? What confuses people, or what do people mostly not understand?
For a big part, this is conflating Bitcoin and crypto. I think this is still, we are not there yet, at least in Germany. For most of the people, Bitcoin is still an investment, and they don't get that there's actually much more behind it than just number one. So that's a big one.
Yeah. But I mean, if we look at ourselves, it took me quite a while until I understood that. So it's quite a road to go until you kind of understand. But yeah, so the main difference between crypto and Bitcoin is, what would you say?
So for me, I would put fiat into it as well. So in the fiat system, only one central authority can print money. In crypto, everybody can print money, and in Bitcoin, nobody can.
Yeah.
So this is for me the biggest difference. Of course, there are others, centralization, etc., but we could go on for that probably for another hour. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, the key differentiation is that Bitcoin is truly decentralized. Like nobody really controls Bitcoin, and all the other bullshit is basically somehow controlled by one or different entities. And that's something that you have to get your head around when you're learning about that. Sometimes it's a little bit disappointing when you teach somebody about Bitcoin and they seem to understand everything. And a couple of months later, they come to you and ask you, hey, how do I buy Ethereum? Or how do I buy this and this? And you think for yourself, what have I done wrong teaching?
There's so much input from so many sides, then you can easily forget or get confused again. So it's the decentralization, right, that brings the promise that is unbreakable, that it's limited, that it's incorruptible. Are there any specific initiatives or projects you're working on currently, or that you would showcase maybe?
Yeah, so we are doing in Berlin, we are doing bi-weekly workshops for the community, or with the community, with some other plebs as well. And they are free of charge. So we do that. Of course, we can't go in so much detail as we would when we have a one-on-one session or whatever, but it's focused on absolutely beginners. And if they go step by step through every workshop, they will have the basic knowledge to use Bitcoin, to understand Bitcoin, and that's what it's all about.
With regards to the decentralization, do you see no risk at all that Bitcoin will ever become centralized in any way? I mean, you now have Saylor, who is buying a lot of Bitcoin. Like, I mean, it's crazy. He has like, I don't know how many percentage of the total supply by now. Like he's getting close to 500,000 Bitcoin. Not that this means that it'll be centralized, but maybe also with Bitcoin mining. Do you see no risks there, or do you think there are things that really needs to be addressed in order to keep it decentralized also in the future?
Well, I don't see any risk with owning a lot of Bitcoin. Like even if Satoshi, for example, would come back and, I don't know, sell his Bitcoin or whatever, well, the only thing that could happen is the price dumps. People could buy cheaper sets and everybody would be happy who understands Bitcoin, basically. But for the decentralization, for me, it's really not an issue to own a lot of Bitcoin. The bigger problem I see is rather that people like Sailor and from the last year, the ETFs from BlackRock, Fidelity, and all the other big companies, that they are not really controlling their own private keys, and that people are not really taking care of their own sovereignty of their own coins, and that they leave their Bitcoins on exchanges. But that doesn't really scare me or makes me worry at all about the decentralization of Bitcoin. There are some discussions about how, BlackRock had it in its filings that they leave the option open to fork Bitcoin, for example. Could do that if they control a big majority, not a majority, but like big chunk of the Bitcoin, and maybe even together with some guy like Sailor, let's say. I think what would happen if they really forked off that first they could fork off. No, I'm just kidding. What would really happen is that most Bitcoiners, like the most Bitcoin are in Bitcoiners' hands to really understand it, I think. And like biggest chunk of Bitcoin is in hands of people who really get it. And they would just sell the fork coins, and they wouldn't have any market majority there, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, still to add on that, mining is actually a big one because we don't really know how many proxy pools there are and how many, or to say how much hash rate is actually controlled by little entities. So, or little number of entities. It's hard to tell with all the mining pools and how, or if they are proxy pools for bigger companies. So I think decentralization of mining is a big one that should be addressed in the future. And luckily, there are people working on that, of course, and people who see that problem as well. And for example, the whole BitX movement.
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, it needs like, I don't know, 1 million miners or something, crazy number, of course. But if you think about maybe a couple of years in the future, it's not so crazy anymore because basically these miners are not, or let's say they are pretty much affordable, at least in Germany, of course.
So BitX is like a small little miner that probably never gonna mine any Bitcoin, but it's a way to where everyone can play his part or her part in the decentralization, right? So is that right? So it's a small miner with a hash rate that probably will never ever get you Bitcoin, and it's probably the chances are lower than winning in a lottery. You do your part in decentralizing the network and for very little cost. Is that correct?
Yes, but actually some BitX miners found blocks in the past already. So it's not, the chance is not zero like with a nerd miner or something. But so they, of course, it's not no S19 or whatever, but you have a chance, and they solo mined the blocks, so it's possible actually.
So they are relatively strong in comparison to nerd miner.
Yeah, they're a lot stronger. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And with you, we're talking about BlackRock and MicroStrategy. They're all storing their Bitcoin currently on Coinbase. Is that right?
Think so. That's what I heard and what I read. I read through the, I don't know the English name for that. Like basically I read on MicroStrategy that they let third parties control their coins, and I think that they have their coins on Coinbase. I recently, like a couple of days ago, I saw that MicroStrategy was sending from their Coinbase addresses to some unknown wallet address, and some are speculating that Sailor was freezing his coins. I don't know if that's true. I didn't really have a closer look into that. But yeah, what they're basically all doing is that they hold their coins with Coinbase. That's kind of an issue because people are invested in the ETFs and in the MicroStrategy. And
you don't think it's a big issue? Did you say it's not a big issue, or?
No, it's an issue for people who are invested in these things. Like they don't really own the Bitcoin. They are like invested in the Bitcoin price going up. If something happens to, I don't know, Coinbase, or even if like the ETFs would hold the keys for them, that will also be a risk. I think it's a bigger risk with trusting other people to hold their keys than holding your own keys. I mean, it's sometimes even in the Bitcoin space, it's discussed if all people can hold their private keys. I think that's not possible. Not 8 billion people in the world can hold their private keys, even just from the basic thinking that you have so and so many billion children, you have so and so many billion very old people or people who are like, I don't know, mentally not capable of keeping their private keys. There has to be some kind of third party that controls their keys, or maybe relative or someone. And, but I think for the general public, it should be, or it's advisable to learn how to hold your own keys. It's not that difficult, I think.
I mean, I see this on one hand, and I think it does take time, probably, let's say at least 10 years, I think. I mean, because it's a completely new concept. But on the other hand, I see all these developments like Trump wanting to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve, or even replacing gold to a certain extent. So that's going really fast in my view. Looking ahead, what do you see as the next big milestones in Germany? I mean, Trump came out, now Germany is also addressing it. First the AfD, now the FDP. Next week there's a roundtable with the FDP. Not that it should maybe play a major role, but it's definitely signs that things are moving. And if Trump says we're going to have a strategic reserve, then I guess other players will come in. And I'm a bit afraid that, the normal people will be left behind a little bit while nation states are stacking on Bitcoin. What do you see in the near future? What's coming, and also with regards to Germany?
With all right now discussed strategic Bitcoin reserves, like in the USA or even in Russia, or I think last week Switzerland proposed deciding if they should implement a strategic reserve. But the problem is that the state is holding the Bitcoin on behalf of the people, but I don't really see how first people could profit from that if they don't own Bitcoin for themselves. It could also be a risk in the sense that, you kind of like, for us, the goal is to like separate money and state. And with the Bitcoin strategic reserves, you kind of prolong the process of keeping the fiat system running. I mean, you can discuss it like maybe it's a good way to have like a slow death and not a rapid death where everybody's a chaos. But I think the major thing is, and I come back to your question right now, that I don't see like big major milestones in Germany. And that's mainly because of the political situation here, that people are very against Bitcoin. They are most have like a very socialist mindset, and that makes them opposed to Bitcoin. What I see is that the economic outlooks and the more and more coming inflation will economically force people to learn about Bitcoin. You will be forced to really have a look into that, how to use Bitcoin as a tool for protecting yourself against devaluing the money, protecting against an overreaching state who tries to control certain payments, who tries to censor and block people. And I think that's what's really not a milestone in the sense, okay, now we have a major event. I think it's slowly but surely coming that people are waking up.
So pain. There needs to be more pain to learn. Yeah,
you have to learn by pain. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a pity, but that's very realistic. But you said the separation of money and state. I always think, okay, but actually, what we mean by that is separation of money printing and state. Or do you really mean you want to separate money from state?
Yeah, how I see Bitcoin is that the whole financing of the state and its whole apparatus is really the key of Bitcoin, where it comes down to like the state itself is financing itself by either taxing people or taxing people by stealing their money quietly via inflation. And I think that's really the main goal for me, at least for Bitcoin in the long sense, that we should separate money and state, because money is the biggest tool for anybody, for an individual and collectives and entities like state or big corporations to really use money as a tool for power. And if you separate money and state, then life will be much better and easier.
So if the state has control over the money, it will always have the incentive to enrich itself and their cronies. So that's the Cantillon effect, basically. So you have the incentive, if you have the power to control the money supply or whatever, you always will use it to your own benefit. It's never for the people, actually.
Yeah, true. But the supply, once you have some money from taxes, you need to spend, of course, to actually have people backing you, like the police or the army. I mean, in my view, if you completely separate money and state, there is no state, right? I mean, what's going to be left of the state? There will be no state. So I think at least
there would be no state, but there would at least be a very much smaller state, and the state would have to think about what they offer the people, like a normal company or everybody is normally doing in life, that you have to offer products or services to other people to get something. Main thing you want to get back is money because it secures you for the future. Yeah. And I think it would, I don't know if we could, not we, but if Bitcoin would defund the state, if the state would completely be gone, I'm not so sure about that. But at least it would be way smaller, and the problems we all face come from governments would be much less. Yeah.
Yeah, so people probably always need a way to organize themselves. So maybe the state just changes in its shape or whatever you want to call it. So you need some organization, but maybe it's not about looting your people anymore. That would be great.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I never thought about it that way years back, but now I definitely think the state is expanding. The state has privileges that lets them expand, and it's not healthy, and you need a level playing field with the same rules, and then there's real competition, and then the best idea wins, and what's happening right now is the total opposite. So I totally agree. It should definitely be smaller also in Germany. I mean, it's crazy what's happening there. At the end of my podcast, I asked my guests to share what they think is the most important thing about Bitcoin that newcomers should know about and understand in, let's say, 30 seconds, because that's usually the time span that people pay attention on social media. So what would you tell a newcomer, or how could you, if you try orange pill a newcomer in 30 seconds, what would you say, any of you?
So for me, I probably just would want to trigger people to think about some things. So I wouldn't use the whole 30 seconds, I guess. So I would try to trigger them with a catchy or bold phrase where they have to actually stop and think about. And maybe they find their way into the rabbit hole by that. So I would borrow from the Matrix movie. It should be like a splinter in their mind. And I don't know, Bitcoin will liberate you, or I like there was a tweet sometimes, I didn't know where it was originated from, but it goes, if money talks, then Bitcoin sings. I like that one.
Okay.
So, or maybe ask uncomfortable questions to them. So, how is money created, for example? That's a good question. So it got me started in the Bitcoin journey. I think that's probably sometimes it is enough. So don't overcomplicate things, and don't sound like a crazy person when you want to hack the whole Federal Reserve System into 30 seconds and explain them why Bitcoin is important. So maybe let them think for themselves.
Yeah. For me, Bitcoin, what was mind blowing a couple of years ago when I really got more into Bitcoin, when I learned about the scarcity aspect, that Bitcoin really is the most scarce thing on Earth or in the universe, maybe, except for maybe human time or love or whatever. And that really struck me. And what also struck me is that Bitcoin is just information, and you can store it in your head if you want. It's really the first thing where you can really protect your property rights with it. And it's a kind of a tool for freedom. And if I would have a suggestion for anybody new, like, learn about it. Don't make the mistake to not be interested in it. You should at least like have a look into it.
Great. Any new projects for the future? What are you going to do in the next weeks, months with your company?
Yeah.
What are you up to? Anything you want to share?
Well, right now we're trying to expand a little bit and try to also get to corporations to like have a look into Bitcoin, see if there's a possibility for a Bitcoin strategy for them. And that's our major next big thing. But in general, like for the viewers, maybe stay interested and keep on learning. I had that phase when I got so over-informed with Bitcoin information that after a couple of years, you sometimes get disinterested, but I think you should keep on learning with Bitcoin, because there are already all the time coming so many new things that there's really no stopping and learning.
So yeah, and don't forget, everyone orange pilled is a success story for all of us. So keep orange pilling.
Great. Well, thanks so much for this insightful conversation about Germany. So there's hope. There's stuff going on in Germany. There's definitely also challenges. You doing your bit, I doing my bit. Yeah, I wish you all the success. Last question. You also offer consultancy in English or only German, or can also English-speaking people contact you?
Yeah, currently we focus on German-speaking clients, but maybe in the future, yeah, we can get it done and translate it all into English.
Okay. So we'll blend in your website, and well, thank you so much, and see you around at the meetup, hopefully, or a conference.
Thanks
Thank you.
for having us, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.